Coaching, and we are here to discuss stopping the meltdown cycle when sibling gets involved, right? So if you're having a sensitive kiddo meltdown cycle situation in your house and you have more than one kid, it is going to be tough for you often, right? To wonder whether or not you need to manage your child's big emotions, or if you need to get your other children who are watching out of the way, or which child to handle in this situation. And I want us to talk about this from a big picture angle, and then we'll look at one of the small picture focuses that we teach so many of our clients. We're gonna cover this whole angle today. So one thing that I hear parents really get stuck on is in managing these big, intense emotions. Your child might be screaming, kicking, yelling, throwing things. And if you have other children in the room, then the intensity just naturally grows, especially for you as a parent, right? You're managing your mindset. You're trying to manage your child's emotional skills and their mindset and handling whatever it is that they're saying. And then you have a 2-year-old or a 6-year-old watching or listening in, or maybe even an older child who is just fed up with the meltdowns continuing to happen over and over and over again. So we have multiple kids who are feeding off of each other, maybe even encouraging each other to use emotion management skills, but that ends up triggering your sensitive kid, right? We see sensitive kids who can be explosive in their behavior, as I just described, and also sensitive kids who can be implosive, saying things like, I'm the worst kid ever, nobody likes me, you love Sissy more than me, I never get enough time with you, Sissy always wins the game, things like that. And this is more of a low self-esteem statement, which can create sense of self-worth. Children can say things like, life would be better off without me, or I hate you, I don't love you. And these are scary statements. These are a relationship tearing statements. And that means that your child is really struggling with not just their level of worries and fears, but also with their sense of self. We have a issue here with your child believing that they are not good enough. And when this dynamic happens, that we consider this an implosion. Inside, they are on fire and exploding. They're just not necessarily throwing those words along with elbows and fists and kicks, but it is no different in intensity or extreme when we look at the difference of need if your child's having meltdowns with these behaviors going on. So I want to make sure that we're all clear that whether your child is exploding or imploding, the ramifications and the repercussions of the situation with your child and your other children, their siblings, is going to be the same. Your child's needs they might be demonstrating different behavior, but their needs at the root are the same. So I want to make sure that that's clear, because as a parent, if this is not your expertise, then you could be really struggling with wondering what behaviors you need to prioritize, which behaviors you need to tackle first. And this is part of what we teach our clients, is that sense of prioritization. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself right now. What I want us to talk about is some of the dynamic that you could be struggling with when your child is melting down. If a sibling was involved as a catalyst, say for example, they're playing a game and sibling isn't doing what your sensitive kid wants them to do, you may feel compelled to step in and help problem solve. You may feel like it is your job to do what most parent coaches will refer to as refereeing, right? So let's, tell me what's going on. I'll call the flag on the play, and then I'll tell you what you guys should do next and make the command, like you need to go to the penalty box, right? If we're thinking about, my husband plays hockey, and so we'll stick with that sport for today, all right? So that's one way to do it. It is likely going to get you to be very tired. However, if you just constantly feel like you're giving your kids advice, you're calling the shots, you're telling your children that you're the one in charge, they don't know how to make the decision for themselves, and as a result, you end up exhausted. You also end up resentful in this situation, because if you're constantly giving your kid advice, it's not for lack of intention, right? You want your children to learn from the advice you're giving them. Unfortunately, because your child is not demonstrating emotion management skills, when you tell them what to do, they are not actually registering what that you are teaching them in that moment. They're not taking that short-term memory information and storing it into long-term memory. So basically what you're doing in this situation is you're just putting a Band-Aid on what needs surgery. And as a result, your child is going to constantly and more consistently need your advice because you are perpetuating a belief that they can't fix the problem themselves. Now, I totally get that this could be really difficult for you as a pill to swallow, especially when one kid is hitting the other kid, right? It could be really tough to watch your children duke it out physically and not get in the middle and tell your children what to do. And this is one of the things that we really see a lot of our clients struggle with, because when you're watching your children engage in physical aggression, and our clients will say the same thing, Megan, so you're just telling me I should let my kids hit each other. And that is absolutely not what I am saying. With the goal as a parent and the objective quickly is to get your kid to control themselves. And that means that you have to stop saying, you do this and you go there, right? And this can be really confusing because as a parent, it's your job to create safety. Absolutely. That is your job, to create a safe environment for your children to then learn how to be safe themselves. And it is your child's job to keep their bodies safe. And so as you create the safe environment, you're teaching 2 children at once, at least in this situation, right? So we'll just keep it simple. We'll talk about 2 kids at this point. But if you got 3, we're just exponentially complicating the situation, okay? So the principle stays the same, however. When 2 children are arguing or verbally or physically, and one child is in meltdown mode, it is still your responsibility to convey to the child who's in meltdown mode that they can control their behavior. And this goes against what typical parent coaches will teach you, or typical advice givers, even psychologists who give this advice will teach you to remove your sensitive kid from the room. They will teach you to set the tone for the environment by saying to your sensitive kid who's losing it, I won't let you impact the family game like this. I'm going to go with you to your room. And they do, they give advice regarding the concept of time in. Let's move you from the situation. I'll stay with you. I'll spend time with you, sit with you with your feelings, hold space for your emotions like a big old container, and wait for you to ride out your emotional explosion away from the siblings, which means the siblings are either going back to their game because they're able to control their emotions differently, or they're left to their own devices because they're less explosive, and they're left to deal with the emotional intensity themselves. And you're dealing with the child who has the most intense behaviors at this point. And so you go over and you're either in their room or with them, or you're in the a different room in the house where there's less there's less noise, because you don't want, and the principle is that you don't want your child to feel alone in this moment. And so you're just there, right? You're there, maybe you're validating and you're helping them notice that their feelings make sense, but their behavior is not okay. And you're saying, I won't let you hit your sister or whatever. All of that sounds great. And it's also true that if your kid is stuck in a meltdown cycle, it is much more complicated than that. And so that tip is just that. It's a magic trick. It's a bibbidi bobbidi boop. If we just do this, the problems will go away. And quite frankly, that's simply not effective belief system, right? That perspective is not going to allow you to solve the problem at the root, because what you're doing is you're removing your child from the environment that caused the emotional trigger, and you're helping them reduce their emotional intensity, but you're also changing the subject, right? It's a distraction. It reduces the emotional intensity. It might even reduce the physical aggression opportunity. However, it does not teach your child how to stay in that moment when the heat is rising and actually move out of the emotion. We have a transition involved, and sensitive kids struggle with transitions. We have a sense of shame involved because now they're removed from their favorite example or their toy, or the fact that they wanted to play with their sibling and now they're not getting to. So then we have escalation involved. And you have all the other variables of their bedroom or whatever room you end up ushering them into. And so as much as this skill can be used for clear and clear, just cut and dry safety, if your kids are wailing on each other and you don't have any other skills, dividing and conquering is definitely one to keep on the table. I'm not saying never use it. I am saying that it is insufficient. There's a lot of these one-liners out there, especially on TikToks and Reels, or these short form, just do-it-yourself type advice process for you as a parent, for you to weed through. And if your child's having meltdowns on a daily basis, they're hitting, kicking, screaming, running away, throwing things, hiding under the bed, sticking their head in their closet, just saying like, no, I won't address feelings. No, nothing helps. No, deep breathing doesn't work. They're just constantly, in your words, resisting the skill set that you want to give them. Then you are stuck in a meltdown cycle, and the removal of your child from the stressor is not the fix-it. It will not help your child learn how to calm down in the moment. And when kids get stuck in a meltdown cycle, you have to help your child calm down in the moment. And you need to learn skills that do this playfully. Play is the child's language and toys are their words. That means that your communication in that moment can't be, I'm the boss, let me throw a flag on the play and you need to go in the penalty box, right? And as much as I would love to tell you your kid doesn't feel like they're going into the penalty box when you move them into the room, if you say things like, yes, I can't let you hit your sister, so we're going to go over here. Yes, I know that's hard. You'll get to play soon. I love you very much and I won't let you hit your sister. You can have big feelings, but you can't hit. All of that language, your child is still perceiving themselves as the black sheep. And so as much as I would love to tell you that your intentions are being heard and understood by your kid, they are not. Your child is living in shame. Their internal conversation is, I can't, I won't, no way, and I don't deserve to win, and I don't know how to win either. And so any parenting tactic that you use without changing your child's mindset and their perspective on life is going to be interpreted through the lens of, I'm a bad kid, I don't know how to do this, and I don't deserve to feel better. And so when we're not changing that dynamic first and pervasively throughout the ability to parent in a more effective way, your child will continue to feel punished even if you never used timeout. Now, of course, if you used to use timeout and now you're using time in, I get that you've been trying to improve your knowledge in managing kids' big emotions, in choosing not to teach your child that they get rejected when they demonstrate negative emotions. Absolutely great. Also, if you've been hearing what I teach regarding the fact that young children don't have internal conversations about their behavior, instead they have a perspective, all right, which is different than an actual conversation with themselves in their heads. And timeout presumes kids are going to talk to themselves about what they just did, and talk to themselves about what they should do differently, and talk to themselves about how they feel bad about it, and talk to themselves about that would motivate them. That's all of what timeout presumes, right? Where we teach our clients, their child has a perspective of doomsday and the emotional conversation is shame. What I really want to make sure you understand as a listener in the audience here is that is not a conscious conversation. Your child is not actually telling themselves over and over and over again in their head before the age of 6 that they are a bad kid and that they can't handle problems. After the age of 7 and up, yes, they will have those thoughts. They will believe it, which is where that thought becomes more ingrained in their identity. We start to see this for sensitive children and non-sensitive children alike. Identity, who you are, how you think about yourself, what you think you're capable of, whether or not you believe you're a good or a bad person, all of those identity-based statements inside who you are is starting to be developed between the ages of 1 and 7. And so young children start building the subconscious identity statements in this young age, but they're not actually recalling that information in their own mind. And they're certainly not capable of accurately and consistently accurately reporting it to you. This is where children get really, really stuck when they end up trying to seek support through outside providers like an individual therapist or a school counselor or a mentor or a coach who's working directly with the child, because typically what's taught to the children is that their thoughts will affect their feelings, which will affect their behavior. Children don't have internal conversations. They are in the here and now, and they're telling themselves right now what their challenge is. They're not recalling how they should think about it based on yesterday's behavior. You're training their behavior based on how they feel inside, not based on how they think about how they feel inside. That is a brain capacity that is just simply not available to young children. And certainly not available consistently, even if your child presents as wiser beyond their years, smarter beyond their years, or intellectually or emotionally gifted. That skill set is not something you can rely on based on your child's development in order to then use that understanding, that understanding that they've demonstrated that skill set before, that skill set is pervasively developed enough to actually change their behavior. You are the one that teaches your child new behaviors, not your kid's memory of what to do differently next time when they're stressed. If you're trying to teach your kid to leave the situation, which is what time out or time in implies, walk away, right? The count to 10, breathe, walk away, all that stuff. It's a physical transition that is meant to teach your child to leave a situation when they're upset. That's not the only trick of the trade, right? If your kid's going to hit somebody and the alternative is to walk away, yeah, sure. But how many children do you know who often will walk away when they feel angry from a situation? Wouldn't you want them to learn to stay in that situation even though they're angry and persist through the challenge and yet use more effective skills, right? So leaving is actually an extra step that is inefficient and ineffective and at the very least insufficient, like just not enough for a child. It's not enough of a skill for a child to actually learn how to collaborate when angry, which is what led to the blow up in the first place. Your child was having an issue with a sibling, playing a game, sibling wasn't playing the game they wanted to or whatever, and your child ended up blowing up because they don't know how to effectively communicate. And part of communication is body language and body management in terms of the emotional intensity in their body and the emotional sensations. So when we think about the focus that your child is having, it's not in knowing what to do, it's in knowing how to do it when they are stressed, overwhelmed, and frustrated. And often this dynamic, as we see with our clients, is pervasive in the whole family dynamic. We see so many parents who are stuck in knowing what to do, and yet when fried and overwhelmed, revert back to old behaviors like yelling or making empty threats because their strategy is insufficient for sure, but also because your emotion management skill set is insufficient. If all you know how to do is hold your breath and stay calm for a little while until things shake out in your environment, your emotion management skill set is also lacking, which is why the emotional regulation skill set of the entire family impacts the meltdown cycle and typically will grow a meltdown cycle. So why we teach our clients that you have to first address your own skills, your own emotion management skills, your own capacity to shift out of this dynamic, and then also your capacity to notice whether or not your kid is actually decreasing their emotionality right before your eyes, so that when they say they're using a skill, you can watch their body language and their nervous system shift. And being able to see that in front of you is a skill set you need to learn. And the only way you're going to learn it is if you are able to experience that in yourself. If you know how to shift your emotional state in the moment when stressed, and it's not just keep my crap together, don't yell, right? That's not the only conversation you're having in your mind. And when you know how to do that, you know how to manage your body, you know how to move the tension out completely rather than just pretend it's not there and compartmentalize, then you have the freedom to teach your kid in a more effective way. So certainly it's a heck of a lot easier to be playful if you're not just quote unquote trying to stay calm. You're actually feeling calm and curious about why your children are behaving in this way. And then also you are shifting out of your own level of stress. You feel empowered in that, and you're more mindful as a result because you're more able to pay attention to small details. And so when we see that your stress reduces the stress in the entire household, this is the other piece that is so critical when we're talking about eliminating the meltdowns. We have so many parents who often will say, I didn't realize how much of this is all about me when I'm teaching my children to manage their emotions. And that's because most of us didn't learn how to do this when we were growing up. So there's nothing wrong with you. It's not your fault that you've bought into the story that has been fed to you, right? That your child needs to learn on their own, just like you were supposed to learn on your own. No, baloney. Your skill set, you had to learn on your own as an adult because you probably didn't learn these skills pervasively as a child. However, in parenting, we are supposed to teach our kids how to do these skills. This is the way the children are developed. Sensitive children actually learn better from their parents than they learn from professionals and their peers. So because of that, and in terms of what the research demonstrates, changing the dynamic that you have with your kids actually drastically improves their likelihood of living an emotionally healthy way, and drastically reduces their symptoms of depression and anxiety, according to research. So this is not just some pie in the sky belief system that if you feel better, then you're going to think your kids are better because you feel better, right? We're not just changing your perspective, we're also changing how you relate to your kid, how that delivery is received by your kid because of how you're relating to yourself, because of how you're carrying yourself then. And then we're talking about the fact that obviously if you're disingenuinely playful, you're just trying to distract your kid by being a class clown, then your child's going to read you and take that in and perceive that lack of genuineness. So they're not going to actually follow your lead. They're going to feel like you just want them to shush up and you're just trying to turn off their emotion like a light switch. And nobody feels good when that happens, right? I'm sure when you've had a hard conversation and you've been venting or communicating a stressful event, and your spouse or co-parent or your own parent or a friend of yours just cracks a joke and then doesn't validate you, that feels yucky, right? Or they just crack a joke and they validate you and then they change the subject. Right? So we're not talking about using humor or play to change the subject. We're talking about being able to help your child notice how they can playfully reduce their emotional intensity in that moment, even when they're just about to hit siblings. And that skill set is one that you need to be able to convey with squared shoulders and without panic, and a calm level of a capacity to slow down time, where you feel capable of being less stressed in that moment, even when your children are engaging in physical intensity. Because walking up to your kids and they're whacking each other, you can't run in there and say, whoa, 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 break it up, right? That intensity for you, even if you feel powerful because you're bigger than your kids, doesn't mean that you're actually slowing the process down, right? Now, obviously, walking on eggshells doesn't help either. The other side of things, which is, why'd you do that? You can't do that. What's going on? You just hit your sister. I can't believe it, right? We have a disempowered accusation type of statement happening here. When you're calmly observing that your children are engaging in physical aggression and they're just about to stop each other, and stop themselves, you won't notice that if you're just constantly jumping in. And so obviously working with a professional to stop this behavior quickly is my advice to you, because if your kids are hitting each other, it's not the time to just wait for this to shake itself out. Back in the 80s and 90s when we were raised, our parents would say things like, kids will be kids, or whatever, and allowed physical aggression in the household. Or perhaps maybe that just wasn't allowed because they used fear to parent, and they would hit you back when you hit your siblings. And so they decided to teach you not to hit by hitting you, right? Which obviously doesn't make any sense. But neither of those skill sets that we had growing up in the traditional parenting realm allowed children to learn how to stop their urge to hit in the first place. And instead it was just choose not to hit in order to avoid getting hit, which is not the process that we teach with our clients. We don't teach social rejection. We don't teach shaming. We don't teach the capacity for children to know better without actually learning how to do better. And then we also don't shame parents in not knowing what to do prior to working with us. So the dynamic is that, sure, you don't have the process yet. It's not your fault that you don't have the process, because not a lot of people are teaching this. And it's also true, or in my knowledge, nobody's teaching our protocol. But what I can tell you is that the dynamic that you're stuck with is not just in trying to stop the behavior at that level of intensity, but also upstream, and being able to combine both of those skills at the same time. So you're teaching your child how to regulate their emotions before they get to the point of popping off, also knowing exactly what to do when your child is in the middle of popping off, so you reduce the frequency and the intensity at that point, and how long that argument, that physical argument lasts, and then also teaching your child after the fact, so that you're preventing it in the first place in a more targeted manner by noticing, okay, my kid is actually hitting. We need to obviously teach our kids not to hit. So there's a full before, middle, and after activity process that's necessary in the family dynamic in order to make sure that you have the capacity to turn this around full force, like 100%. And the capacity that you need to be able to follow through on all of those stages of your child's development requires you to educate yourself. Of course, we have to teach you much more than just what's available on a 20-minute podcast, right? And then lastly, the ability to carry that consistently out and see whether or not your child's making progress. Because we also teach our clients how to track the data so that your child not just stops at the root, but continues the compounding skills that are necessary for them to keep this level of personal safety going. So if this is something that you want support with, I encourage you to book a call with our team. Go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk, and we will have a conversation with you about what you're stuck on, where you might need support, and what you need to be able to do to shift out of this dynamic effectively. Right. So you can click the link in our bio wherever you find this training, in the comments section or in the notes of this show, so that you have the opportunity to truly learn what it's going to take for your particular family to stop this cycle, and whether or not our process would work for you. We don't invite very many families who call us to, or who book with us to work with our team, especially for families whom our work would either not be sufficient or isn't necessary yet. And then if we feel like you need to grow in a different way before you would actually benefit from a transformational program that is quite swift in solving the problem, then we would be recommending a different level of service for you prior to working with our team potentially too. So I can't tell you all of the ins and outs of our stuff and that it will work with you without actually talking to you and supporting you in breaking out of this and teaching you what's necessary to truly turn this around. So if you're interested in having a conversation with the team, happy to walk you through exactly what's necessary there. Head over to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk and book that call, and we'll talk to you soon.